If you're wondering whether or not ICE agents are spending their time and resources going after criminals and deporting them, you would be wrong. In fact, a recent story indicates that they thought it would be a great idea to follow a 10-year-old with cerebral palsy all the way to the hospital, stand outside of her hospital room as she underwent gallbladder surgery, and then immediately detain her after she was well enough to leave the hospital, and she has been in a shelter ever since, waiting on deportation. Her name is Rosa María Hernández, and she was brought into the United States when she was just 3 months old. She had to be rushed to the hospital for an emergency surgery, and as a result, went through a border patrol checkpoint. And at that point, they realized that she was undocumented, and that was when everything transpired. So the family members say that the agents at first refused to even allow them to close the door of the room that she was in, and they would not leave. Anywhere Maria went, they went. And Rosa Maria's teachers say that even though she's 10 years old, because of her condition, she has the brain function of a 4 to 5-year-old. And so she is not a threat to anyone by any means, but it doesn't matter. This is what ICE officials are spending their time on.
So for those of you who don't live near the border or have not been there, you might be confused. Like, well, if she's at a border checkpoint, she's by definition just coming into the country. That is actually not true. There are border checkpoints deep into the country. So a lot of American citizens in places like Texas live below the checkpoints. And so that's why she had never had to travel past the checkpoint before, even though almost her entire life has been lived in the state of Texas.
Yeah, so this happened in Laredo, Texas, and there has been absolutely no empathy from the Border Patrol agents who were involved in this. In fact, there was a spokesperson for the Laredo Sector Border Patrol, and they said that they are committed to enforcing the immigration laws of this nation. Per the immigration laws of the United States, once medically cleared, Rosa María will be processed accordingly. And by the way, they won't even allow her to be with her mother. She's in this shelter. Her family has no word about the conditions of this shelter. They're not able to communicate with her, and they're thinking that she's just going to get deported. It's insane.
And it looks like not the only case.
Yeah.
You know, we know that they're detaining grandmothers and people with children and separating families. I just have one word, which is scumbag. I mean, these guys are scumbags. I understand that, you know, that there's a hiring, like a hiring spree at ICE and on the border, but if you're involved in this kind of stuff, like how do you sleep? How do you look at yourself in the mirror? These are not the people who are threatening the United States, nor are undocumented immigrants. We know, the stats show, they are not disproportionately threatening Americans any more than we threaten ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, extreme levels of violence towards immigrants has been a normal part of this country for maybe just 2.5 decades. You know, millions of people deported, which is just an incredibly traumatic process for anyone. I mean, if you can imagine what it must be like to forcibly be removed from your country, the country that you're living in, whatever that may be, and sent back, you know, across the border, often to very violent areas. This is just like, you know, the tip of the iceberg is a very extreme example and shows just how fanatic and ideologically driven these agencies can be in their zeal to deport anyone and anyone they can get their hands on.
So the only slight disagreement I'll have with you guys is that I think, and I know it's probably not a disagreement, I think the person culpable here is the people who gave the orders in the first place.
Right.
So I know it's not an excuse that they're following orders, but to me, the agents are far less culpable for carrying out the orders than the guy who gave the orders.
Sure.
So Trump had promised, oh, don't worry, I'm only going to take out immigrants, undocumented immigrants with a criminal background. But he lied, and they've now doubled the number of people that they have deported that have no criminal background at all. And obviously, this young 10-year-old girl does not. And she came over, as we pointed out, when she was 3 months old. So her to send her back to her country. She's never known any country but America. And so you can say, well, I don't care, and I don't care if she's sick. Okay, fine, then maybe the adjective that Francesca used does apply to you, if you're that heartless. Now, it's not to say that there shouldn't be a rational solution for how we handle this overall problem, but if you think, yeah, no, I don't care that they don't have a criminal background. I don't care this is the only country they've ever been. I don't care that they're sick. They should be guarded like they're some sort of fugitive and then put into these detention centers. Well, you should watch the movie that we actually just aired on youtube.com/theyoungturks from Brave New Films. So they did a movie called Immigrant Prisons, and I helped in the premiere, and I heard all the stories of people who've been in these detention centers. It is brutal. And some people, and there's no due process. One guy stayed in one of these detention centers for over 9 years. He didn't have a criminal background. He didn't do anything wrong. He actually wound up eventually staying.
Right.
But since you have no rights when you go to not a prison, but to a detention center, you could stay there indefinitely. And they have no idea how long Rosa María Hernández is gonna stay there. Yeah. She's without her mom. God knows the state that she's in. And one of the guys that I talked to after the movie Immigrant Prisons was someone who had spent time at a detention center here in California. He's a pastor. And again, he came over when he was a kid. The only country he's ever known is this one. And he set up a church here, et cetera. And he had gone with his kids, like he always does, to check in because he's trying to do the right thing. And his 5-year-old or 7-year-old watch him get arrested. Then he gets sick inside the center, and they never give him treatment. He almost died because they don't care. A lot of them are private, so they're like, well, treating you would cost me money, and this is a private corporation. I don't want to spend any money. I just want to house you for as long as I can.
Right. So I want to go back and just comment on, the portion of the American electorate that looks at stories like this and has absolutely no sympathy whatsoever for this 10-year-old girl, who, by the way, think about how scary it is to have surgery when you're 10 years old, and then add the extra layer of like horrific behavior by these Border Patrol agents who are standing outside the door guarding it as she's going through something pretty scary. And then afterwards, she's separated from her family and thrown into a shelter where she doesn't know what her fate is, right? She's 10 years old, but okay, you don't have any empathy. And I think a lot of people justify it by saying, well, these people come in and then, they take our resources and, taxpayer money helps fund these types of whatever. They'll come up with some sort of justification, right? Which, by the way, on a federal level, aside from getting help when they go to emergency rooms, they don't get any type of government assistance. That is a huge lie. On a state basis, states make decisions whether or not they give some aid, but on a federal level, that is not the case. But here's the thing, what are your priorities? Are your priorities to go after a 10-year-old, or maybe oil companies that profit an insane amount and still get subsidized by the government, right? Or, I don't know, countries that don't deserve our foreign aid getting billions of dollars a year in foreign aid as they break international laws. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we should be concerned about. That's where the real money goes. Or the fact that the Defense Department continues to get more and more of our funding just so private contractors can make more and more money. Like, that's where the money goes. Wake up. The thing that drives me crazy is that we continuously go after the powerless, right? I get it, we're all frustrated. We want better lives for ourselves and for our families, but you don't get that better life for yourself by going after 10-year-olds.
No.
Watch The Young Turks commercial free, download it or stream it, watch it any way you like at tytnetwork.com/join.